He lost his wife in a gambling bet, then sold his helpless bride to a ruthless millionaire CEO to repay his debts. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome to Mr. Peter's Stories. Before we begin, let's take a moment for a beautiful prayer, for love, for happiness, and for our precious family. May our hearts always be connected, no matter where life takes us. Today, I want to speak to you from the deepest part of my heart. My beautiful family, for the past 2 weeks, I have felt something that truly breaks my heart. I've seen that many of my family members are showing less interest in my channel, and I cannot lie to you, it hurts. It feels like a part of me is fading, like the bond we built with so much love is weakening. But I need you to know this. I could take the easy way out. I could make short, simple stories with half the effort. But I don't. I never have, and I never will. Because I love you. Because I respect you. Because when I tell a story, I pour my soul into it, not for views, not for numbers, but for you. I am here because of you, I create because of you, and I stay because of you. But if you choose to leave, I will not stop you. You have the right to enjoy whatever makes you happy, and if your heart no longer finds joy here, I will accept it with love. But for those who still believe in me, who still feel the magic of my stories, I promise you, I will never give up on you. To make things even better, I am launching a new channel tomorrow. This will be a place where I upload shorter videos, maximum 1 hour, so you can enjoy more stories in a way that fits your time. And I'm doing this because I don't want scammers to take my name and fool my beautiful family. Because more than 50 fake channels were created by many people with the same name. Now, my dear family, let's take attendance. Are you here with love? Did you enjoy the last stories? Let me know in the comments because your words mean everything to me. And please, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. It's not just a button, it's a way to tell me you're still with me, that our bond is still strong. Let's begin with love. The exclusive watch boutique on 5th Avenue gleams under soft lighting, crystal chandeliers casting prismatic patterns across glass display cases. Inside, Kelani Yara, with flawless mahogany skin and intelligent eyes, arranges a collection of timepieces with practiced precision. Her movements are graceful, efficient, a woman who values every second of her day. A wealthy couple exits with a small signature bag, nodding appreciatively at Kelani. Once they're gone, she checks her watch, a modest but elegant piece, and discreetly slips textbooks from beneath the counter. Finance equations fill the margins with her neat handwriting. 2 lives carefully balanced, student by day, luxury saleswoman by night. The boutique's door chimes. Shelton Malcolm enters, commanding attention without effort. His tailored suit speaks of wealth. His confident stride speaks of power. Other browsers instinctively step aside as he approaches the main counter, where Kelani quickly tucks away her studies. "Good evening," she greets him, her Jamaican accent adding musical warmth to her professional tone. Shelton's eyes, penetrating, assessing, take in everything about her in seconds. "I'm looking for something significant. We have several collections that might interest you. Any particular complication you prefer?" A hint of a smile. "Surprise me." Kelani leads him to their most exclusive display case, reserved for limited editions. As she explains the craftsmanship of each piece, Shelton watches her hands, her expressions, studying her more than the watches. "This one," she says, presenting a masterpiece of engineering and design, is limited to 50 pieces worldwide. The movement contains 27 jewels, and the case is platinum with— "I'll take it," Shelton interrupts. Kelani blinks. "Sir, this particular piece is priced at $100,000. "I'm aware." He slides a black card across the counter. Their fingers brush, an accidental touch that lingers a moment too long. While processing the sale, Kelani feels his gaze. "Is this a special occasion?" "It is now," he replies. As she carefully wraps the purchase, two businessmen enter, nodding at Shelton with deference. He acknowledges them briefly before turning back to Kehlani. They look impressed, she observes. People often are by the wrong things. His eyes meet hers directly. Time, money, status, none of it matters without purpose. The statement, unexpected from someone who just casually purchased a six-figure watch, intrigues her. Later, as closing time approaches, Kehlani finds herself glancing at the door. It opens at exactly 8:57 p.m. Shelton returns without the package. "Did something disappoint you about your purchase?" she asks. On the contrary, he approaches the counter. "The watch was perfect, but I realized I forgot something important." "And what's that?" "To ask you to dinner." Kehlani hesitates, professional boundaries evident in her posture. "I make it a policy not to date clients." "Admirable. Then I'll return the watch." His smile reveals perfect teeth. "No longer a client." A laugh escapes her, genuine, unexpected. "That would be a very expensive dinner invitation." "Some opportunities are worth any price." He places a business card beside the register. "I'm in asset management. Every investment I make is carefully considered." The manager signals it's time to close. Kehlani begins her closing routine, expecting Shelton to leave. He doesn't. "I can wait," he says simply, moving to examine a display of vintage pocket watches. Outside the boutique, New York's evening pulse surrounds them. Taxis, pedestrians, the symphony of ambition that defines Manhattan after dark. "My apartment is uptown," she says, professional demeanor still in place. "I know a small Italian place near Columbia," he offers, "since that's where you study." Her surprise is evident. "How did you—" "The textbook under the counter, Advanced Financial Theory. Only Columbia uses that edition this semester." He points to a waiting town car. "No pressure, just dinner." Kehlani studies him, weighing possibilities against practicalities. "I have an early class tomorrow. I'll have you home by 11. As she considers, her phone buzzes with a text from her roommate. Another night shift cancelled, another month of tight budgets, a semester of careful saving gone for an emergency root canal. Italian sounds nice, she decides. In the restaurant, intimate, authentic, not a tourist in sight, Shelton listens as Kehlani describes her journey from Kingston to New York. Unlike the customers who see only a saleswoman, he asks about her research, her ambitions, her 5-year plan. "Most men don't ask women about their financial strategies on first dates," she notes, wineglass poised at her lips. "Most men are fools." He leans forward. "Intelligence is the only true luxury." As promised, his car delivers her home by 11. No presumptuous kiss, no pressure for more. Just his card pressed into her palm. Call when you're ready for Chapter 2. Kehlani enters her modest apartment, where her roommate Taylor sleeps on the couch surrounded by nursing textbooks. On the refrigerator, a calendar marks tuition, due dates in red. She places Shelton's card beside it, running her finger over the embossed lettering. For the first time in years, Kehlani allows herself to imagine a life beyond the constant hustle, beyond the juggling act of work, studies and survival. A dangerous indulgence, perhaps, but for tonight, she permits herself the luxury of possibility. Chapter 2. Calibrated Charm. 3 weeks later. Kehlani exits her finance class, surprised to find Shelton leaning against a sleek black Aston Martin outside Columbia's business school. Students pause, taking notice of both the car and the man. "This is becoming a pattern," she says, clutching her textbooks. "Unexpected appearances." "Is it unwelcome?" Shelton asks, taking her books. "It's noteworthy." A small smile escapes her. "Some might call it stalking. Some might call it courtship." He opens the passenger door. "I have something to show you." They drive through Manhattan, Shelton navigating traffic with practiced ease. 3 dinner dates, 2 lunches, and 1 very educational afternoon at the Met, he tallies. Yet I still don't feel like I know the real Kehlani Yara. Perhaps because you're too busy orchestrating perfect scenarios, she challenges. The exclusive restaurant reservations, the private gallery tours. It's like dating a concierge service. Shelton laughs, genuine, unguarded. Fair criticism. He turns onto a tree-lined street in Brooklyn. That's why today is different. They stop before a modest brownstone. Through the window, Kehlani sees a group of children gathered around tables. What is this place? The Brooklyn Bridge Scholarship Initiative, Shelton explains. I fund it. We provide tutoring and college preparation for first-generation Americans. Inside, children work on various subjects. They greet Shelton with familiarity as he introduces Kehlani. Darius, serious beyond his years, shows Kehlani his calculus homework. Mr. Malcolm says, "You're studying advanced financial theory. Could you check my derivatives?" As Kehlani reviews his work, Shelton steps away to help Rosa with her reading. For 2 hours, they immerse themselves in tutoring. Kehlani watches Shelton, noticing how differently he interacts with these children compared to the deferential businessman at the boutique. Later, they walk along the Brooklyn Promenade, the Manhattan skyline glittering across the water. "Why didn't you tell me about the foundation?" Kehlani asks. "You assumed I was just another rich man showing off," Shelton replies, his voice lacking accusation. "Sometimes it's easier to let people believe what they expect. Is that what you do? Let people see what they expect? Don't we all?" He stops, turning to face her. The saleswoman who's really a scholar. The Jamaican immigrant who speaks better French than most Parisians. Kehlani tenses. "How did you—" "I heard you with that customer from Marseille last week. Your accent was flawless." His eyes hold hers. "We all have our presentations, Kehlani. The question is, what lies beneath them?" For the first time, she allows herself to truly look at him. Beyond the wealth, beyond the charm. "And what lies beneath yours, Shelton Malcolm?" Instead of answering, he kisses her. Not tentative, not aggressive, precise like everything else about him. When they separate, the city lights reflect in his eyes. "That," he says quietly, "that is what lies beneath." A week later, Shelton's penthouse apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows frame the cityscape. Kehlani, wearing only his dress shirt, examines photographs on his bookshelf. Shelton in various global locations, always alone, always impeccably dressed. "You're never with family in these," she observes. From the kitchen where he prepares coffee, Shelton's movements pause fractionally. "My parents died when I was young, car accident." "I'm sorry." She studies another photo, Shelton receiving an award. "No siblings?" "No." He brings her coffee. Foster care isn't conducive to maintaining family connections. This revelation, delivered so matter-of-factly, shifts something in Kehlani's understanding of him. She touches his face gently. "You never mentioned foster care. It doesn't define me." He takes her hand, kisses her palm. "Just as your scholarship struggles don't define you." Their relationship accelerates. Montage. Shelton attending Kehlani's study groups, Kehlani accompanying Shelton to business dinners. Intimate moments in her apartment while her roommate works overnight shifts. Passionate encounters in his penthouse. At the watch boutique, her manager notices the change in Kehlani. "Your wealthy admirer seems serious." "It's not about his wealth," Kehlani defends. "Of course not, darling. But it doesn't hurt that he purchased our entire spring collection for his clients." The manager smirks. "Some girls have all the luck." Later that night, a charity gala. Kehlani, stunning in a midnight blue gown, stands at Shelton's side as he introduces her to New York's elite. She observes how they respond to him, with respect tinged with something else. Fear, Caution. Xavier Stone, imposingly tall with piercing grey eyes, approaches. Unlike the others, he shows no deference to Shelton. Malcolm, Xavier acknowledges coolly. Unusual to see you at charitable events. Stone, Shelton returns with equal frost. Unusual to see you among humans. The tension between them is palpable. Xavier's attention shifts to Kelani, his assessment clinical, penetrating. Xavier Stone, he introduces himself, Chief Executive Officer of Stone Technologies. Kelani Yara, she replies, meeting his gaze directly. Something flickers in Xavier's expression. Surprise at her confidence, perhaps. Interesting company you're keeping, Malcolm. Isn't it? Shelton's arm tightens around Kelani's waist. If you'll excuse us. As they move away, Kelani asks, "What was that about?" "Business rivalry," Shelton dismisses. "Stone thinks he's better than everyone." "And what do you think?" Shelton's smile doesn't reach his eyes. "I think we should dance." On the dance floor, Shelton holds her close. "Move in with me," he murmurs against her hair. The request, sudden, unexpected, causes Kelani to miss a step. "What?" "It's been 3 months. Your lease is ending. My place is closer to campus." His logic is impeccable, as always. It makes sense. Moving in together is a significant step. So is this. He stops dancing, reaches into his pocket, and produces a small velvet box. Around them, other dancers continue, oblivious to the moment unfolding. Inside the box, a vintage emerald ring, delicate yet distinctive. "It belonged to my mother," Shelton explains, vulnerability threading through his usual confidence. "The only thing I kept from before." Kelani stares at the ring, emotions warring within her. "Shelton, we've only known each other 3 months. Sometimes 3 months is enough to recognize what matters." He takes her hand. "Marry me, Kelani." The ballroom seems to fade around them. In this moment, there is only his question and her answer hanging between them like suspended time. "Yes," she whispers, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Yes." As Shelton slides the ring onto her finger, Kelani catches Xavier Stone watching from across the room, his expression unreadable. For a fleeting second, doubt clouds her joy. Then Shelton kisses her, and all questions dissolve into the promise of their future together. Chapter 3. Family Wisdom, Kelani's apartment. She arranges her laptop carefully, adjusting lighting and background. Her roommate Taylor adjusts the stack of fashion magazines, hiding their peeling wallpaper. "You sure about this?" Taylor asks, eyeing the emerald ring. "It's been what, 4 months?" "When you know," Kelani responds, but a flicker of uncertainty crosses her face. She checks her watch, a gift from Shelton, replacing her modest timepiece. "They're calling in 5 minutes." "And he's late," Taylor observes as the door remains closed. "Again." Before Kelani can respond, Shelton bursts in, bringing a wave of designer cologne and frantic energy. "Traffic was insane." He kisses her cheek. "Sorry, baby." The laptop chimes. On screen, Winston Yara appears, weathered face framed by grey-streaked dreadlocks. Beside him, Grace Yara sits straight-backed, her nurse's uniform still on after a long shift. "Mama, Daddy!" Kelani's face lights up, her Jamaican accent strengthening instantly. "Me daughter!" Winston's deep voice fills the room. "You look well. America feeding you proper?" "Yes, Daddy." She reaches for Shelton's hand, drawing him into frame. "I want you to meet someone special. This is Shelton Malcolm." Shelton transforms before Taylor's eyes, his typical intensity softening into respectful charm. "Mr. and Mrs. Yara, it's an honor to meet you. Your daughter is extraordinary." Grace's smile is cautious but warm. Winston's expression remains neutral, his eyes sharp. "Shelton and I have some news," Kelani continues. She holds up her hand, the emerald catching light. "We're engaged," Grace gasps. Winston's face remains impassive. That's sudden, Grace manages. When did this happen? Winston asks, voice carefully measured. Last week, Kehlani explains, words tumbling out. We're thinking a small ceremony, next month perhaps. Next month, Grace exchanges glances with Winston. We don't want to wait, Shelton interjects smoothly. When something's right, why delay? Winston leans closer to the screen. And what do you do, young man? Investment management, sir. My firm handles portfolios for private clients. Successful, then? I've been fortunate. Winston's eyes narrow slightly. Fortune without roots rarely lasts. An awkward silence follows. Shelton maintains his smile, but Kehlani recognizes the tension in his jaw. Daddy, please, she says quietly. It's fine. Shelton squeezes her hand. Your father is right to be protective. The conversation continues with strained pleasantries. Grace asks about wedding plans. Shelton discusses flying them to New York for the ceremony. Throughout, Winston watches silently, his expression revealing nothing. After goodbyes, Shelton checks his phone. I need to handle something at the office. He kisses Kehlani. Dinner at 8? Once he's gone, Taylor raises an eyebrow. Your dad didn't seem thrilled. He's just being protective, Kehlani defends, but uncertainty clouds her expression. Her phone rings, Winston calling privately. She answers, switching to patois. Daddy, I know what you're going to say. Listen to me, daughter. Winston interrupts, his voice solemn. That man has shark eyes. What? He smiles, but it never reaches his eyes. You know what fishermen call that? Shark eyes. All predators have them. Kehlani sighs. Daddy, you're judging him through a computer screen. A screen doesn't hide what's inside a man. Winston's voice softens. You're educated now, yes, smart with books and numbers, but some lessons don't come from university. I know what I'm doing, she insists. Do you? His question hangs in the air. Be careful with every step you take, Kehlani. Some chains look beautiful until they're locked. Later that evening, an upscale restaurant. Shelton orders for both of them, his attention repeatedly diverted to his phone. Is everything okay? Kehlani asks. You seem distracted. Just work. He puts the phone away. What did your father say after I left? The directness of the question surprises her. What do you mean? He called you back, didn't he? Shelton's perception, usually an attractive quality, suddenly feels invasive. What concerns does he have about me? Kehlani hesitates. He thinks we're moving too fast. And you? Do you think that? I think, she chooses her words carefully, that this is happening very quickly. Shelton reaches across the table, taking her hand. For a moment, his composed facade slips, revealing something vulnerable beneath. I've spent my life calculating, measuring risks, waiting for perfect timing. Then I met you. His fingers tighten around hers. For once, I don't want to wait. The sincerity in his voice dispels her doubts. Yet later that night, as Shelton sleeps beside her, Winston's warning echoes in her mind. Some chains look beautiful until they're locked. 1 month later, a small wedding chapel. Kehlani stands in a simple white dress, Taylor adjusting her veil. Through the window she watches guests arriving, mostly Shelton's business associates. Her parents' seats remain empty. They couldn't get visas in time, she explains to Taylor, disappointment evident despite her attempt to hide it. Or they didn't try, Taylor suggests gently. Maybe they're making a statement. The wedding coordinator appears. 5 minutes, Miss Yara. Alone, Kehlani opens her clutch, removing an unopened envelope. Her father's letter arrived yesterday. She breaks the seal, unfolding the single page. Me, daughter, It begins. A fisherman learns to read the water, to sense storms before they appear. There is a storm in that man's eyes. The letter continues, Winston's concerns laid bare. The final line strikes deepest. Marriage should shelter you from storms, not lead you into one. A knock interrupts. Shelton's best man pokes his head in. It's time. Kelani folds the letter, tucks it away. Taking a deep breath, she squares her shoulders and steps toward the door. Winston's warnings fading beneath the wedding march beginning to play. The ceremony passes in a blur. Vows exchanged, rings placed, congratulations offered. Through it all, Kelani observes Shelton with new awareness, searching for what her father saw, the predator beneath the charm. At the small reception, Shelton introduces her as Mrs. Malcolm to an endless stream of business contacts. Each time, she feels a subtle erasure of herself, from Kelani Yara to Shelton's wife. We should leave soon if we want to make our flight, Shelton murmurs, his hand possessive at the small of her back. Where exactly are we going? She asks, having agreed to his surprise honeymoon destination. You'll see. His secretiveness, once exciting, now triggers a flicker of unease. As they prepare to depart, Kelani notices a man watching from across the room, Xavier Stone, uninvited yet somehow present. When their eyes meet, he raises his glass in what might be congratulations or warning. Before she can decide which, Shelton steers her toward the exit. In the limousine, Shelton makes a business call despite the occasion. Kelani stares out the window as Manhattan streets blur past, her father's words echoing, "Be careful with every step you take." The Plaza Hotel. Their honeymoon suite is extravagant, champagne on ice, rose petals scattered across the king-sized bed, floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Central Park. "No flight?" Kelani asks, confused. "Change of plans." Shelton kisses her neck. "I need to handle something first. Business emergency." He checks his watch. "Wait for me. I won't be long." "It's our wedding night," she reminds him, disappointment evident. "And we have our entire lives ahead." His smile is confident as he adjusts his tie. "Order anything you want. I'll be back before midnight." After he leaves, Kelani removes her wedding dress, changes into the lingerie she'd carefully selected. She orders champagne, strawberries, waits. Hours pass. The champagne warms. Uneaten strawberries wilt. Midnight comes and goes. By 3 a.m., she sits by the window in a hotel robe, her wedding ring twisting nervously around her finger. The city twinkles below, indifferent to her growing dread. At 3:15 a.m., the door finally opens. Relief floods her as she turns, then freezes. The silhouette in the doorway is not Shelton's. A man steps into the light. Taller, broader, with cold grey eyes that assess her without emotion. Xavier Stone. "Mrs. Malcolm," he says, voice devoid of warmth. "We need to talk about your husband." Chapter 4. Ante up, 3 days before the wedding. A private room behind an unmarked door in Chinatown. Cigarette smoke hangs thick in the air, obscuring the faces of 5 men seated around a poker table. Chips worth thousands stacked before them. At the center, Shelton, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up, expression tense, despite his practiced smile. Across from him sits Xavier Stone, his posture relaxed, eyes calculating as he studies his cards. Unlike the others, he drinks water, not whiskey. 20,000? Shelton pushes forward chips, his confidence belied by a slight tremor in his hand. The other players fold. Xavier matches the bet without hesitation. "Let's see them." Shelton reveals his hand, a straight flush. A triumphant smile spreads across his face as he reaches for the pot. "Impressive," Xavier comments, then lays down his cards. Royal flush. Shelton's smile falters. Around the table, murmurs and low whistles. "That's..." Shelton struggles to maintain composure. "Quite a coincidence." "Is it?" Xavier's voice carries no emotion. Third time tonight. Perhaps you should reconsider your strategy. The dealer tallies Shelton's remaining chips. A meager pile. Mr. Malcolm is down 380,000. Xavier checks his watch. It's late. Shall we call it a night? No. Shelton's response comes too quickly. One more hand, double or nothing. The other players exchange glances. One by one, they stand, excusing themselves. Soon, only Shelton, Xavier, and the dealer remain. Just us then, Xavier observes. 760,000 if you win, 0 if you lose. Shelton hesitates, sweat beading on his forehead despite the room's chill. Deal. Cards slide across green felt. Shelton's hand shakes as he lifts his cards. His expression reveals nothing but his eyes, a flicker of desperation. Xavier studies his own cards impassively. Your bet. Shelton reaches into his jacket, removes a small velvet box. Inside, the emerald ring he would later give Kehlani. This is worth at least 50,000. I'm not a pawnbroker. Xavier's dismissal is cold. Then what about this? Shelton produces a property deed. My apartment, market value, 2 million. Mortgage to 80% of its value, Xavier counters, having clearly researched his opponent. Try again. Desperation etches lines around Shelton's eyes. He pulls out his phone, opens his photos. My fiancée. He turns the screen toward Xavier. The image shows Kehlani at a restaurant, laughing, unaware of being photographed. For the first time that night, Xavier's expression changes, a flicker of disgust. What exactly are you suggesting? Xavier's voice carries a dangerous edge. One night, Shelton clarifies, alcohol and desperation loosening his tongue. She wouldn't have to know the arrangement. You get your money's worth, I clear my debt. Silence fills the room. Even the dealer looks uncomfortable. Xavier's face hardens into something glacial. You would trade a woman like currency? It's not a question, but Shelton answers anyway. She's exceptional, Jamaican, educated, beautiful. His words slur slightly. Could be an asset to someone like you. Xavier stands abruptly, buttoning his suit jacket with precise movements. This game is over. Wait. Shelton's panic breaks through. I can't cover this debt. You know that. Then you shouldn't have placed the bet. Xavier moves toward the door. I'm getting married next week, Shelton calls after him. Wedding night at the plaza, presidential suite. His voice drops. She'll be waiting for me. Xavier stops, his back to Shelton. And you won't show. I'll make an excuse. Business emergency. Shelton's desperation turns to calculation. One night, then my debt is clear. Xavier turns slowly, his expression unreadable. Show me a marriage certificate and I'll consider your debt settled. Shelton blinks, processing the counter-proposal. You want proof we're actually married? I want proof you're willing to formalize your betrayal. Xavier's voice carries quiet menace. Let's see if your courage matches your depravity. One day before the wedding. Afternoon. Xavier's office in a gleaming downtown skyscraper. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcase Manhattan's skyline. He reviews documents until his assistant interrupts. Sir, there's a Detective Morris here to see you. Detective Morris, rumpled suit and perceptive eyes, enters. Xavier gestures to a chair. Detective. What brings the NYPD to Stone Technologies? Just following up on some background checks. Morris opens a folder. You had a poker game 3 nights ago. Private room at the Golden Dragon. I occasionally play, yes. With Shelton Malcolm. Xavier's expression doesn't change. Among others, Mr. Malcolm has an interesting history. Morris slides photographs across the desk. Surveillance images of Shelton with various women. Pattern of seducing wealthy women, draining accounts, disappearing. Why tell me this? Because you're not the only one watching him. Morris's gaze is direct. Word is he's in deep, not just with you. I'm not sure how this concerns me. Just thought you might want to know who you're dealing with. Morris stands, especially since his new target isn't wealthy, just a student working at that watch boutique you frequent. This detail that Morris knows about Xavier's watch purchases registers in Xavier's expression. Are you investigating me, detective? Let's say I'm investigating intersections of interest. Morris moves toward the door, like why a tech CEO is playing poker with a known con man. After Morris leaves, Xavier stares at the photographs. He opens his laptop, types rapidly. Images appear, social media photos of Kehlani with Shelton, news clippings of charity events they attended. His research is methodical, thorough. His phone rings, a secured line. The caller speaks Russian, their conversation terse. Xavier's responses are fluent, authoritative. He ends with, "Najdite Yego." Find him. Wedding day, evening. A high-stakes poker game in progress. Similar players to before. Shelton's seat is conspicuously empty. Xavier checks his watch, then his phone. A text message appears with an image. A marriage certificate. Shelton Malcolm and Kehlani Yara. Xavier excuses himself, steps into a private room. He dials a number. Is everything prepared at the plaza? Yes, sir, a voice confirms. Presidential suite is under surveillance. Mrs. Malcolm arrived an hour ago. Mr. Malcolm left 20 minutes ago. Destination. Unknown, but his luggage remains. Xavier ends the call, contemplating his next move. His phone buzzes again. Detective Morris. Though you should know, Morris says without preamble. Malcolm just booked a flight to Buenos Aires. One way, leaving tonight. The newlywed husband fleeing already. With cleaned-out accounts, his and hers. Plus, he's taken out 3 credit cards in her name. Xavier's expression darkens. And you're telling me this because I don't like men who prey on women, Morris states simply, and because I think you don't either. After hanging up, Xavier makes another call. Change of plans. Meet me at the plaza in 30 minutes. He opens a wall safe, removes a small recording device and a manila envelope. Inside, photographs of Shelton at various poker games, bank statements showing massive debts, and transcripts of conversations. Evidence of a systematic pattern. Plaza Hotel, 3:10 a.m. Xavier stands outside the presidential suite, accompanied by his security chief. Sir, the security chief speaks quietly. Are you sure about this? It's not our concern what Malcolm does. It became my concern when he offered his wife as collateral. Xavier straightens his tie. Wait here. At 3:15 a.m., Xavier enters the suite. Kehlani turns, expectant, then freezes in recognition and fear. Mrs. Malcolm, he says, voice carefully controlled. We need to talk about your husband. Kehlani clutches her robe tighter. How did you get in here? Where is Shelton? Your husband won't be joining you tonight. Xavier remains by the door, maintaining distance. Or any night. What are you talking about? Alarm rises in her voice. Who are you really? The man your husband is running from. Xavier removes the manila envelope from his jacket. And the man who's going to tell you the truth about who you married. Kehlani's expression shifts from fear to defensive anger. Get out before I call security. Call them, Xavier challenges calmly. But first, ask yourself, why isn't your husband here on your wedding night? The question lands with precision. Doubt flickers across Kehlani's face as she reaches for her phone. Chapter 5. The empty suite, presidential suite, the plaza. 3:17 a.m. Kehlani's hand trembles as she holds her phone, Xavier's words hanging in the air between them. Outside the window, Manhattan's lights glitter indifferently. You have 30 seconds to explain yourself before I call security, she warns, finger hovering over the keypad. Xavier remains perfectly still. Your husband sold you tonight. What? The word escapes as barely a whisper. 3 days ago, Shelton Malcolm lost $760,000 in a poker game. Xavier's voice is clinical, devoid of emotion. He couldn't pay, so he offered you instead. Kehlani's laugh holds no humor. That's absurd. You're lying. I rarely lie, Mrs. Malcolm. It's inefficient. Xavier places the manila envelope on a nearby table. The evidence is there. Bank statements, gambling debts, the recording of him offering you as payment. Her phone slips from suddenly nerveless fingers. This is insane. Shelton wouldn't. He did. Xavier remains by the door, keeping distance between them. He's currently on his way to Buenos Aires with your combined savings and 3 credit cards in your name. Kehlani reaches for the envelope with mechanical movements. Inside, she finds exactly what Xavier described. Financial records, photographs of Shelton at various gambling establishments, and a small digital recorder. Play it, Xavier instructs. Her fingers hesitate over the device. I don't believe you. Yet you haven't called security. Their eyes meet across the room, hers filled with growing horror, his unreadable but watchful. With trembling fingers, she presses play. Shelton's voice fills the room. One night, she wouldn't have to know the arrangement. You get your money's worth, I clear my debt. Kehlani's body seems to fold in on itself. She drops the recorder as if burned. No, she whispers. No. Xavier remains silent, allowing the reality to settle over her. Outside, rain begins to fall, droplets streaking down the massive windows. Why are you here? She finally asks, voice hollow. To collect your payment? Something flickers in Xavier's expression, perhaps offense. I'm not in the habit of forcing women into anything, Mrs. Malcolm. Then why come at all? Anger sparks beneath her shock. To gloat. To enjoy my humiliation. To warn you. He gestures toward the envelope. Check your bank accounts. Warily, Kehlani reaches for her laptop. As she logs into her accounts, the color drains from her face. They're empty, her voice breaks. Everything, even my student loan disbursement. He's thorough, Xavier acknowledges. The credit fraud alerts will start tomorrow. Kehlani closes the laptop, a strange calm settling over her. She moves to the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. I should have listened to my father. What did he say? That Shelton had shark eyes. A bitter smile touches her lips. Eyes that never truly smile. Xavier studies her silhouette against the window, a woman processing betrayal in real time, yet maintaining dignity. Something in her composure resonates with him. You're free to leave, he says abruptly. I have no intention of honoring Malcolm's arrangement. Kehlani turns to face him. How generous of you, she responds, sarcasm brittle in her voice. I'm not merchandise to be claimed or declined, Mr. Stone. For the first time, Xavier's expression shows genuine reaction, a slight nod of acknowledgement, perhaps even respect. Number you're not. An uncomfortable silence stretches between them. Kehlani glances around the opulent suite, the champagne she ordered hours ago, the rose petals on the bed, the wedding dress draped over a chair, all symbols of a fabrication. I'll need to contact the credit card companies, she says finally, practicality asserting itself through shock. File a police report. Detective Morris is already building a case, Xavier informs her. Shelton Malcolm has done this before. This new information lands like another blow. Kehlani sinks onto the edge of the bed. There were others. Xavier nods once. You weren't special to him, just the next target. The words, though delivered without cruelty, cut deep. Tears finally break through Kehlani's composed exterior. She doesn't sob, just allows them to fall silently, maintaining what dignity she can before this stranger. Xavier watches, uncomfortable with her emotion, yet unwilling to leave. From his pocket he produces a pristine handkerchief, offering it without comment. Kelani accepts it, drying her eyes. I quit my job for this marriage, gave up my apartment. Reality crashes down harder. I have nowhere to go. That's not entirely true. She looks up, suspicion replacing sorrow. I'm not interested in whatever arrangement you might propose. I'm offering you a job, Mrs. Malcolm, not an arrangement. Xavier's tone remains businesslike. Stone Technologies needs an executive assistant. The salary is substantial. The position includes a corporate apartment until you secure your own. Kelani stares at him, disbelief evident. You want to hire me? Now? Why would you possibly? You speak 3 languages, have an almost complete finance degree, and managed to impress my HR director at the Thompson fundraiser last month. Xavier straightens his cuffs, a habitual gesture. The fact that your husband is a criminal doesn't negate your qualifications. Kelani's laugh holds no humor. So this is... what? Pity? Charity? This is business. Xavier moves toward the door. I recognize talent when I see it, regardless of circumstance. And if I refuse, then you refuse. He retrieves a business card from his wallet, places it beside the laptop. The offer remains open until noon tomorrow. As he reaches for the door, Kelani's voice stops him. Why did you really come tonight? The truth, Mr. Stone. Xavier pauses, his back to her. When he finally turns, something in his expression has shifted, a brief glimpse beneath the corporate mask. I despise men who treat women as commodities, he says quietly. And I believe in setting things right when possible. With that, he exits, leaving Kelani alone with the shattered pieces of her new reality. Dawn breaks over Central Park. Kelani stands at the window, in the same position she's maintained for hours, watching as the city awakens. The suite, booked for a romantic honeymoon stay, now feels like an elaborate stage set for a cruel play. A knock at the door startles her. Half hoping, half fearing it might be Shelton returning with explanations, she opens it cautiously. Hotel manager, professionally sympathetic, stands in the hallway. Mrs. Malcolm, I'm afraid there's an issue with the payment for this suite. Of course. Another humiliation. Let me guess. The credit card was declined. I'm afraid so. All 3 cards, actually. He clears his throat. We would normally offer some flexibility, but given the circumstances... What circumstances? The manager shifts uncomfortably. Mr. Malcolm checked out at midnight. He left quite definitively. Kelani's composure finally cracks. He told you he wasn't coming back. Not in those words, but I understand. She cuts him off. How much time do I have? Standard checkout is noon, but that's fine. She closes the door, leans against it, eyes shut tight against fresh tears. On the bed lies her wedding dress, diamond earrings, gifts. From Shelton, and the emerald ring. Beside them, Xavier Stone's business card. 3 paths forward: sell the gifts to sustain herself temporarily, return to Jamaica defeated, or accept the offer from a man who entered her hotel room at 3:15 a.m. with evidence of her husband's betrayal. She picks up her phone, dials a familiar number. After several rings, her father answers. "Daddy," she says softly, her Jamaican accent returning in full force. "You were right about him." Winston's deep voice carries across oceans, steady and unflinching. "Come home, daughter." "I can't." Determination hardens inside her like cooling steel. "Not yet." "What will you do?" Kelani looks at Xavier's card, then at her reflection in the window. A woman transformed by betrayal, yet somehow still standing. "I'm going to rebuild," she answers. "On my terms this time." After ending the call, she slips her wedding ring off, places it deliberately beside the champagne bottle Shelton never opened. With methodical precision, she packs her few belongings, leaving behind everything he gave her. At precisely noon, Kehlani exits the plaza, wearing the simplest outfit she brought for the honeymoon. Black pants, white blouse, hair pulled back severely. She looks neither wealthy nor destitute, just purposeful. On the sidewalk, a sleek town car idles. The driver steps out, opens the rear door. "Mrs. Malcolm," she hesitates. "It's Miss Yara now." "Of course, Mr. Stone sent me to take you wherever you need to go." Kehlani studies the car, weighing suspicion against pragmatism. "Tell Mr. Stone I don't need his charity." He anticipated you might say that. The driver offers an envelope. Inside, a contract for temporary employment at Stone Technologies, starting salary listed, corporate housing terms outlined. At the bottom, Xavier's signature and a blank line awaiting hers. Professional, legal, respectable, exactly what one might offer a qualified candidate. Nothing more, nothing less. Kehlani reads every word, searching for hidden catches, finding none. With deliberate movements, she removes a pen from her purse, signs her name, and enters the car. As the plaza disappears behind her, she doesn't look back. In her lap, her hands remain steady, the indentation where her wedding ring sat just hours ago already beginning to fade. Chapter 6. Transaction Stone Technologies Headquarters. Morning. The glossy skyscraper reflects clouds racing across a steel-grey sky. Inside the lobby, Kehlani stands precisely on time for her first day, dressed in clothes purchased yesterday, conservative, professional, unremarkable. Security checks her ID, issues a temporary badge. 52nd floor, Ms. Yara. The executive elevator requires keycard access. As she hesitates, Marissa Chen, sharp-eyed and immaculately dressed, approaches. "You must be Kehlani." Marissa's assessment is quick but thorough. "I'm Marissa Chen, head of operations. Xavier asked me to show you around." As they ascend, Marissa explains the company structure with efficient precision. Stone Technologies has 4 divisions: quantum computing, AI systems, cybersecurity, and biotech interfaces. Xavier oversees all of them personally. "That seems intense," Kehlani observes. "Everything about working for Xavier is intense." Marissa's smile holds warning rather than warmth. He expects perfection, offers no second chances, and rewards results with almost uncomfortable generosity. The elevator opens directly into a reception area of minimalist elegance, all glass, steel, and white surfaces. Employees move with purpose, conversations hushed, energy focused. "This is different from what I expected," Kehlani admits. "What did you expect?" "Something colder, more sterile." Marissa studies her with renewed interest. "Most people find it exactly that." They reach a desk positioned outside an imposing corner office. "This is where you'll work. Your predecessor lasted 3 months." "What happened to her?" "She cried during a performance review." Marissa's tone suggests this was an unforgivable sin. Xavier doesn't do well with emotional displays. As if summoned by his name, Xavier exits his office. Unlike their previous encounters, he's in his natural environment, commanding, focused, sovereign. Executives walking with him listen intently as he delivers rapid-fire instructions. He notices Kehlani, nods acknowledgement without breaking stride. "Conference room, 5 minutes," he tells Marissa, continuing past. "Is he always like that?" Kehlani asks once he's gone. "Like what?" "Remote, detached." "That was actually quite warm for him," Marissa responds, only half joking. "He remembered you existed." Kehlani's orientation proceeds efficiently. By noon, she's learned the systems, protocols, and expectations. At 12:30, she sits alone at her desk, reviewing security procedures when Xavier emerges from a meeting. He stops at her desk. "How are you settling in?" The question, unexpectedly personal, catches her off guard. "Fine, thank you for the opportunity." It's not charity, he states firmly, reading her underlying thought. I needed an assistant. You needed a job. A convenient transaction, she observes, testing boundaries. Most successful relationships are. His gaze is direct, unapologetic. Your corporate apartment is ready. The driver will take you there after work. As he turns to leave, Kelani asks, Why did you do it? Xavier pauses. Do what? Warn me. Help me. Her gaze is steady. You could have simply had Shelton arrested. For a moment, something flickers beneath Xavier's composed exterior, a shadow of something unresolved. Consider it a correction of balance. Your husband tried to commodify you. I'm offering you autonomy. Through employment. Through opportunity. He checks his watch, a subtle reminder of their respective positions. My calendar is yours to manage starting tomorrow. Tonight, settle in. Tomorrow, prove my decision was sound. The corporate apartment exceeds Kelani's expectations, furnished elegantly, located in a secure building with views of the East River. As she explores, she discovers the kitchen stocked with essentials, bathroom supplied with high-end toiletries, bedroom featuring a luxurious bed with pristine linens. On the dining table, a welcome package containing her employment contract, building information, and a corporate credit card with her name embossed on it. Everything impersonal yet meticulously considered. She opens her suitcase, the only possession she has left after leaving everything Shelton gave her at the plaza. The sight of her few remaining clothes triggers a wave of humiliation she's been suppressing all day. She sinks onto the edge of the bed, finally allowing herself to process the magnitude of her situation. 2 days ago she was getting married. Now she's starting over with nothing but a stranger's calculated generosity. Her phone rings, her roommate Taylor. Oh my God, are you okay? Taylor's voice carries genuine concern. I've been trying to reach you for days. I'm fine, Kelani lies, then reconsiders. Actually, no, I'm not fine at all. What happened? Where are you? Shelton is gone. Kelani's voice catches. He cleaned out our accounts and left the country. That son of a... Where are you staying? Do you need to come back to the apartment? Monica moved in, but we can make room. I'm staying in a corporate apartment. I have a new job. What? How? When? Kelani hesitates, unsure how to explain. It's complicated. Complicated how? Taylor's suspicion is evident. Kelani, what's going on? I'm working for Xavier Stone now. Silence stretches across the line. The scary CEO from the charity thing? How did that happen? Like I said, it's complicated. Kelani changes the subject. Could you pack up whatever I left at the apartment? I'll arrange to have it picked up. After ending the call, Kelani stands at the window, watching twilight transform the city. Her reflection stares back, a woman she barely recognizes, caught between her past and an uncertain future. Her phone buzzes with a text, an unknown number, but the message identifies the sender. Xavier. First meeting tomorrow, 7:30 a.m. The Tokyo team doesn't acknowledge time zones. The message's straightforward professionalism steadies her somehow. This is her reality now. No romantic pretense, just clear expectations and defined boundaries. She responds simply, I'll be prepared. 3 weeks later, Stone Technologies. Kelani's desk has transformed, organized chaos, reflecting her increasing responsibilities. She juggles calls with practiced efficiency, switching between English, French, and the rudimentary Mandarin she's teaching herself at night. Marissa passes, observing her handle a difficult client with composed authority. After the call, she comments, You're still here. Where else would I be? Kelani asks, not looking up from her scheduling. Most people don't survive their first month with Xavier. Perhaps most people take his directness personally. Marissa studies her with newfound respect. You don't? I find it efficient. Kelani finally meets her gaze. After experiencing genuine cruelty, Professional demanding, she shrugs, is simply work. Inside his office, Xavier conducts a video conference with international investors. Through the glass wall, Kelani watches him, commanding, precise, utterly focused. So different from Shelton's performative charm. The meeting ends. Executives file out, nodding respectfully to Kelani, her position as gatekeeper already established. Xavier remains at his desk, reviewing documents until she enters with his afternoon schedule. The Berlin team needs an answer on the quantum prototype, she informs him, and legal sent the acquisition paperwork for your signature. He takes the tablet she offers, reviews her notes. You reorganized my schedule. You had 3 conflicts. I resolved them. Without consulting me, was I wrong? Her question carries no defensiveness, only professional certainty. Xavier studies her, something like approval flickering across his features. Number, you weren't wrong. This small acknowledgement from a man who rarely offers praise feels more significant than it should. That evening, as Kelani gathers her things to leave, Xavier emerges from his office. Join me for dinner. It's not a request, not quite a command, something in between. She hesitates, uncertainty evident. To discuss the Singapore proposal, he clarifies, reading her hesitation. Their cultural expectations require attention to detail you might help with. Of course, professional grounds, safe territory. I'll just need to... Now, he interrupts. They're waiting. Dinner occurs in a private room at an exclusive restaurant. The Singapore executives greet Xavier with respect tinged with wariness. Their surprise at Kelani's presence is evident. Throughout the meal, she observes Xavier's negotiation style, direct to the point of bluntness, yet effective. When cultural subtleties arise, she interjects smoothly, softening his approach without undermining his position. After the executives leave, Xavier orders cognac. Your input was valuable. Thank you. She accepts the compliment with professional grace. You speak Mandarin. It's not a question. I'm learning. 3 weeks of night courses so far. Why? Because 17% of our overseas business involves Chinese-speaking partners. She meets his gaze directly. And because I refuse to be underestimated again. Something shifts in Xavier's expression. Respect, perhaps. Malcolm was a fool. The mention of Shelton, the first since that night at the plaza, lands heavily between them. Kelani's composed exterior falters momentarily. Have the authorities found him? She asks, voice carefully neutral. Not yet, but they will. Xavier studies her over his glass. Does that matter to you? Justice matters. She considers her next words carefully. But closure matters more. And what would give you closure, Ms. Yara? The question hangs between them, unexpectedly personal after weeks of professional distance. Moving forward, she answers finally, building something that can't be stolen. Xavier nods once, understanding evident in the gesture. A commendable goal. As they exit the restaurant, rain falls in gentle sheets. Xavier's driver holds an umbrella as they approach the car. In the back seat, silence stretches between them, not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken awareness. Outside her building, Kelani moves to exit. Xavier's voice stops her. You're an asset to Stone Technologies. From another employer, it might be simple praise. From Xavier Stone, a man who measures words as carefully as investments, it carries additional weight. Thank you, she responds. I won't ask if you're adjusting adequately, he continues, formal language barely concealing genuine concern. But if there are resources you require, I'm fine, she interrupts gently. Truly. Their eyes meet in the dim car interior. For a moment, the professional boundaries between them thin, not romantically, but humanly. Two people acknowledging unexpected connection. Good night, Mr. Stone. Good night, Ms. Yara. As Kelani enters her apartment, she realizes this is the first conversation since her wedding night that hasn't left her feeling diminished. Instead, she feels something unexpected. The first tender shoots of rebuilding her life, not despite adversity, but because of it. She removes her shoes, places them precisely beside the door. On her dining table, Mandarin flashcards, financial textbooks, her laptop open to Stone Technologies' international protocols. Not the life she expected 1 month ago, but perhaps the life she needed all along. Chapter 7. Stone Empire. 3 months later, Stone Technologies headquarters. Early morning light filters through floor-to-ceiling windows as Kelani arrives before dawn. Her new normal. The security guard greets her by name, having grown accustomed to her schedule. Her workspace has evolved. Dual monitors display global markets and company data. A small Jamaican flag stands beside her computer, the only personal touch in an otherwise pristine environment. She reviews Xavier's schedule with practiced efficiency, preparing briefings for his morning meetings. Over recent weeks, her role has expanded beyond traditional executive assistant duties. Xavier now involves her in strategic decisions, valuing her insights in ways that surprise them both. The elevator chimes. Xavier arrives, impeccably dressed as always. Unlike most mornings, however, he carries a bakery bag. "You're here early," he observes, placing the bag on her desk. "Tokyo markets opened with our stock up 6 points, she explains. "I thought you'd want to know immediately. And the London acquisition, legal concerns about regulatory clearance. I've scheduled a call with British Counsel at noon, your time, not theirs." A hint of approval crosses his features. He gestures to the bag. "Coconut bread. There's a Jamaican bakery near my apartment." The unexpected gesture, personal, thoughtful, catches her off guard. "Thank you." "The board meeting is in 30 minutes, he continues, professional as ever. "I'll need the Singapore projections." As Xavier enters his office, Kelani opens the bakery bag. The familiar aroma of coconut bread, like her mother used to make, evokes a wave of homesickness she's kept carefully contained. The fact that Xavier noticed, remembered, and acted on this detail about her background shifts something in her perception of him. The board meeting proves contentious. Stone Technologies directors debate a proposed expansion into medical technology, a field outside their traditional focus. "The regulatory hurdles alone make this inadvisable," argues Director Hoffman, conservative and risk-averse. "We're a technology company, not a healthcare provider." "Artificial boundaries limit growth," Xavier counters, his calm at odds with the tension in the room. "The neural interface we've developed has applications beyond computing." As the debate intensifies, Xavier signals Kelani. She distributes tablets containing data she compiled overnight, market projections, regulatory pathways, competitive analyses. "If I may," she interjects, professional confidence evident despite this being her first board contribution. "I've analyzed similar regulatory crossovers from the last decade. Companies that successfully navigated healthcare integration saw average growth of 37% over 5 years. The directors study her data, impressed despite themselves. Xavier allows a small smile, the closest he comes to public approval. "Ms. Yara has been researching this intersection for weeks," he informs the board. "Her analysis is comprehensive." Hoffman frowns. "With all due respect, since when do we base multi-billion-dollar decisions on an assistant's research?" The room temperature seems to drop several degrees. Xavier's expression hardens. "We base decisions on quality information regardless of source. Ms. Yara holds nearly completed degrees in both finance and international business. Her analysis stands on its merit." After the meeting, Kelani organizes the follow-up tasks while processing what just occurred, Xavier defending her to his board, acknowledging her education, treating her as a valuable contributor rather than just support staff. Late that evening, most employees have departed. Kelani remains at her desk, finalizing details for Xavier's upcoming international trip. Through the glass wall, she watches him review contracts, his focus unwavering despite the late hour. Her phone buzzes. Detective Morris. "Can you meet tomorrow?" "We have updates on Malcolm." The message jolts her from her new routine back to a reality she's been keeping at bay. Before she can respond, Xavier emerges from his office. "You're still here." He observes her phone screen, noting Morris's name. "News about your husband?" "Ex-husband," she corrects automatically. "Possibly." Xavier studies her expression. "Do you need time tomorrow?" "An hour, perhaps. Detective Morris wants to meet." "Take the morning." His tone brooks no argument. "Legal should be present. I'll have Marissa arrange it." "That's not necessary." "It is." Something in his voice shifts, concern breaking through professional distance. "Whatever Malcolm did, Stone Technologies will ensure you're protected." The gesture, protective without being possessive, affects her more than she expects. "Thank you." An awkward silence follows, neither fully comfortable with the personal nature of the exchange. Xavier breaks it by returning to familiar territory. The Tokyo presentation needs revising. Their cultural context requires a different approach. "I've already adjusted it." Kelani retrieves a tablet, shows him her changes. These modifications acknowledge their corporate hierarchy while emphasizing innovation potential. Xavier reviews her work, nodding approvingly. "You understand nuance." "I understand people," she corrects gently. "Technology is precise, predictable. People rarely are." His eyes meet hers, a moment of genuine connection. An insight many in this building would benefit from. Weeks pass. Kelani's role continues to evolve. She attends executive meetings, contributes to strategic planning, and accompanies Xavier on business trips, all while maintaining her formal title of executive assistant. Tokyo, midnight. After a successful negotiation with Japanese investors, Kelani and Xavier work in the hotel's business center, finalizing contracts before tomorrow's signing ceremony. "Their counteroffer was unexpected," Kelani observes, reviewing numbers. "But you anticipated it," Xavier acknowledges. "Your cultural briefing suggested they would test boundaries before committing." "Human nature is surprisingly consistent across cultures," she observes. "People reveal themselves through patterns, if you pay attention." Xavier studies her. How far she's come from the devastated bride he met 6 months ago. Her confidence now is earned rather than assumed, her intelligence honed by adversity. "You've changed," he observes. "Circumstances change people," she responds simply. "Not always for the better." "No," she agrees. "But in my case, perhaps it was necessary." Their eyes meet, an increasingly common occurrence that neither acknowledges explicitly. Something unspoken passes between them before Xavier returns to the contracts. New York, Stone Technologies' annual charity gala. The company's elite gather with wealthy donors to support educational initiatives. Kelani, elegant in a simple black dress, manages the event with characteristic efficiency. Xavier, commanding in formal attire, delivers a speech about technological access for underprivileged students. Watching from the sidelines, Kelani notices something few others would, the subtle way his corporate mask softens when discussing children's potential. Later, as the event winds down, Xavier joins her near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan. "Successful evening," he observes. "The STEM Scholarship Fund exceeded targets." "Your speech resonated," she acknowledges. "Personal experience often does." Xavier looks at her sharply. "What do you mean?" "You spoke about lacking technological access in your youth," she explains. "It felt authentic." A moment passes as Xavier considers her perception. Not many people would notice that detail. "I pay attention," she says simply. As Kehlani exits the gala that evening, she reflects on how thoroughly her life has transformed in 6 months. The woman who lost everything on her wedding night now navigates corporate politics with growing confidence. Her relationship with Xavier, complex, undefined, yet increasingly essential to both of them, continues to evolve beyond professional boundaries while maintaining careful distance. In her apartment later that night, Kehlani removes her elegant dress and jewelry, symbols of her new position. She studies her reflection, recognizing both the woman she was and the woman she's becoming. The pain of Shelton's betrayal hasn't disappeared entirely, but it's transformed into something useful: perception, resilience, determination. Her phone chimes with a message from Xavier. Korean investors confirmed for Tuesday. Your market analysis was persuasive, simple, professional. Yet, in its acknowledgement, something more personal lingers: respect that borders on admiration, connection that defies simple categorization. Kehlani responds with equal precision. They needed reassurance more than data. We'll prepare cultural briefing tomorrow. This is their language now. Work as the foundation, with undercurrents of something deeper neither is ready to name. For now, it's enough. Two guarded people finding unexpected connection through shared purpose, building something neither believed possible before. Chapter 8. Fortifications, Stone Technologies, Executive Floor. 1 year after Kehlani joined the company, morning light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows, casting geometric patterns across her new office. No longer a desk outside Xavier's door, but a glass-walled space adjacent to his. The transformation in physical space mirrors her professional evolution from assistant to junior executive. Industry magazines featuring Stone Technologies' record growth line one wall. Her degrees, finally completed through night classes, hang prominently beside them. A small Jamaican flag stands beside her computer, the only personal touch in an otherwise pristine environment. On her desk sits a watch Xavier gave her 3 months ago. Elegant, understated, valuable not for its price but for what it represented: recognition of her contributions beyond expectation. Kehlani reviews quarterly projections when her phone rings. Her father. "Daddy!" she answers warmly, her Jamaican accent strengthening instantly. "How are you feeling?" "Better today," Winston replies, though his voice sounds weaker than last week. The new medication helps with the pain. She swivels her chair toward the window, concern evident in her reflection. "The specialists should have arrived yesterday. Dr. Rivera promised to call me after his assessment. They're here, yes. Very impressive doctors." Winston coughs, a rattling sound that tightens Kehlani's grip on her phone. "Some big hospital in Miami sent them. Daughter, you shouldn't spend so much on an old fisherman." "You're not just an old fisherman. You're my father." Her tone brooks no argument. "Besides, it's my money to spend. Such an important daughter I have now," Winston teases gently. "Executive at a big American company. Your mother can't stop telling the neighbors." Kehlani smiles despite her worry. How is she handling everything? "You know your mother, praying constantly, cooking enough to feed the whole hospital staff." His voice softens. "She misses you. We both do." "I'll try to visit next month," Kehlani promises, "once we close the Tokyo deal." After ending the call, Kehlani notices Xavier standing in her doorway. How long he's been there, she can't tell. His ability to move silently still unnerves her sometimes. "Your father's condition?" he asks without preamble. "Stabilizing, but the heart damage is extensive." She straightens papers on her desk, a habitual gesture when emotions threaten her professional composure. "Thank you for recommending those specialists." Xavier dismisses her gratitude with a slight gesture. "Dr. Rivera is the best cardiologist in the Caribbean. It was a simple connection to make, but they both know it wasn't simple. Xavier had arranged everything when she mentioned her father's heart attack 3 weeks ago. Private transportation, specialized care, accommodations for her mother, all handled discreetly but comprehensively. The Tokyo deal, Xavier transitions smoothly. Their legal team has requested additional security protocols for the neural interface patents. Work, their safe territory where boundaries remain clear and emotions can be contained in spreadsheets and contracts. I've already addressed it. Kelani retrieves a tablet, shifting seamlessly into professional mode. Their concerns stemmed from our previous data breach incident. I included additional encryption guarantees and scheduled a technical demonstration for their security team next week. Xavier reviews her work, nodding approvingly. Your Japanese is improving. I practice during my commute. What she doesn't mention is that she's been studying 2 hours every morning before work, determined to master the language before their Tokyo expansion. The board was impressed with your quarterly presentation, Xavier comments, still reviewing the contract modifications, particularly your analysis of emerging Asian markets. Coming from Xavier, a man whose praise is as rare as it is precise, the comment carries significant weight. Kelani acknowledges it with a nod, maintaining the professional distance that defines their working relationship, despite the undercurrents that occasionally surface between them. The Singh portfolio, Xavier continues. They're still hesitating on the biotech division investment. Cultural considerations, Kelani explains. Their family has traditional values about medical intervention. I'm arranging a tour of our research facilities to demonstrate the ethical frameworks we've implemented. Xavier studies her. How thoroughly she understands nuances beyond profit margins and market shares. You see dimensions others miss. People aren't spreadsheets, she responds simply. Numbers matter, but motivations matter more. Their eyes meet briefly. An increasingly common occurrence neither acknowledges explicitly. In these momentary connections, something unspoken passes between them, recognition of shared understanding that extends beyond business strategies. Later that afternoon, Kelani attends a product development meeting where engineers present prototypes for the next generation of neural interfaces. She notices a fundamental flaw in the user experience design. The calibration process is too complicated, she points out. Our market research shows that medical professionals want intuitive systems, not technical challenges. The lead engineer bristles. The system is designed for precision, not simplicity. It needs to be both, Kelani counters confidently. Precision without usability limits adoption, especially in developing markets. She outlines an alternative approach that maintains technical specifications while improving user experience. The room falls silent. Junior executives rarely challenge technical teams this directly. Xavier, observing from the corner, intervenes. Implement Ms. Yara's suggestions. Test both versions and bring comparative data next week. His support, public but not effusive, reinforces her position without undermining her authority. It's a delicate balance he's mastered over the past year, elevating her role while ensuring she earns respect on her own merits. That evening, Kelani's apartment, no longer corporate housing but her own place, purchased with her first executive bonus. The space reflects her evolution. Clean lines and functional elegance with subtle Caribbean influences in the color palette and artwork. Financial textbooks share shelves with literature and history, evidence of a mind that values breadth alongside depth. Xavier arrives for their weekly strategy session, bringing dinner as has become their habit. Unlike the elaborate restaurant meals Shelton once used to impress her, Xavier brings simple food from local establishments he's researched. Tonight, Jamaican cuisine from a family-owned restaurant in Brooklyn. You found authentic ackee and saltfish in New York? Kelani asks, genuinely surprised as she examines the containers. The owner's from Montego Bay, Xavier explains, setting files on her dining table. She imports the ackee directly. The fact that he researched this detail Something personal but not intimate exemplifies their current dynamic. Attentive without presumption, considerate without expectation. As they work through market projections for the European expansion, Kehlani notices Xavier watching her with unusual intensity. "What is it?" she asks, setting down her fork. "Your handling of the Singh portfolio," he says. "It was exceptionally well executed. Thank you." She's grown accustomed to his sparse praise, values it for its rarity. The board has noticed. Xavier sets down his tablet. They're discussing creating a new position, Chief Strategic Officer. The implication hangs between them. Kehlani sets down her glass carefully. "And you think I should be considered?" "I think you've earned it." His directness, usually focused on business, now turns to her. "You've rebuilt yourself impressively." The observation, personal, perceptive, shifts the atmosphere between them. Kehlani considers her response carefully. "Necessity is an effective teacher," she says finally. "When everything is stripped away, you discover what truly matters." "And what matters to you now?" Xavier asks, the question far more intimate than their usual conversations. "Building something that can't be taken away." She meets his gaze directly. "Security, independence, purpose. Not connection." His question surprises them both. Silence stretches between them, a moment of unexpected vulnerability from a man who fortifies himself behind corporate walls. "Connection requires trust," she answers carefully. "Trust requires time." "It's been a year," Xavier observes. "Since what precisely?" Her challenge is gentle but direct. "Since you stopped seeing yourself as someone who was betrayed and started seeing yourself as someone who survived." His perception, unnervingly accurate, catches her off guard. Before she can respond, Xavier's phone rings. He checks it, frowning. "Tokyo. I need to take this." As he steps onto her balcony to handle the call, Kehlani observes him. This complex man who rescued her at her lowest moment yet never made her feel indebted, who recognized her potential when she could barely see it herself, who maintains careful boundaries while occasionally allowing glimpses beyond his fortifications. Through the glass, she watches his expression shift from professional neutrality to focused intensity as he negotiates with Tokyo executives. His gestures become more precise, his posture more commanding, the business titan fully engaged. Yet when he catches her watching him, something softens momentarily in his features before the mask returns. When Xavier returns, the moment has passed, professional boundaries restored, personal revelations carefully contained behind their respective fortifications. "Tokyo has concerns about the timeline," he informs her. "I anticipated that." Kehlani retrieves another file from her briefcase. "I prepared alternative scheduling options last week." Xavier reviews her contingency plans, nodding approvingly. "You're always 3 steps ahead." "I learned from watching you," she acknowledges. Their eyes meet again, mutual recognition passing between them. For all their professional accomplishments, these moments of genuine connection remain rare and therefore precious. As the evening concludes, Xavier gathers his files with characteristic efficiency. At the door, an uncharacteristic hesitation. "Your father," he begins, formal even when expressing concern. "If his condition changes, the company jet is available." The offer, practical rather than emotional, yet deeply considerate, affects Kehlani more than grand gestures ever could. "Thank you," she says simply. After Xavier leaves, Kehlani stands at her window, watching the city lights glimmer below. Her reflection stares back, a woman transformed by circumstance, yet still discovering her own depths. The path from betrayed bride to respected executive wasn't one she chose initially, but she's navigated it with increasing confidence. On her wrist, the watch Xavier gave her marks time passing. Seconds and minutes that build into a life reconstructed. She touches it briefly, acknowledging what it represents. Not possession, as Shelton's gifts had been, but recognition of her intrinsic value. Her phone chimes with a message from Xavier. Singapore numbers just came in. Above projections, your strategy was sound, professional, concise, yet in its acknowledgement of her contribution, there exists a different kind of intimacy, one based on respect rather than romance, on recognition rather than desire. Kehlani responds simply, "We make a good team." The reply comes quickly, "We do." These brief exchanges, seemingly mundane to outsiders, contain layers of meaning for two people who measure words carefully and value precision. In their shared language of restraint, even small acknowledgments carry significant weight. As she prepares for bed, Kehlani considers how thoroughly her life has transformed in 1 year, from desperate bride abandoned on her wedding night to a woman building her own legacy. From someone defined by betrayal to someone defined by resilience, and Xavier, from cold CEO offering pragmatic salvation to something more complex. Not quite a friend, certainly not a savior, definitely not a lover, yet somehow essential to her reconstructed world. His presence in her life defies simple categorization, just as her feelings for him resist convenient labels. Whatever exists between them remains carefully fortified, walls built by past betrayals still standing firm. Yet something has shifted, a stone loosened in protective barriers they've both constructed, allowing the first glimpse of what might exist beyond their carefully maintained defenses. Chapter 9, Vulnerability Gambit, Stone Technologies, Midnight. Most floors dark, but light still spills from the executive level where Kehlani and Xavier work on the Singapore merger, a deal that could redefine the company's global position. Takeout containers litter the conference table. Digital displays show market projections, contract points, competitor analyses. Their final condition is unreasonable, Xavier states, reviewing the terms. 51% control of the neural interface division is non-negotiable. It's not about control, Kehlani counters, highlighting passages on her tablet. It's about fear. Their board chair lost his previous company to an American acquisition. This is personal security, not business strategy. Xavier considers her insight. How do you propose we address it? Structural guarantees instead of percentage adjustments. Regional autonomy with global integration. She outlines a complex framework that satisfies both parties' core concerns. As Xavier reviews her proposal, Kehlani observes him. The intensity that never wavers, the focus that's made him legendary in business circles, the barriers that keep others at a calculated distance. This could work, he acknowledges finally. It will work, she corrects with earned confidence. Their eyes meet across the table, two minds in perfect synchronization despite their different approaches. The moment stretches, professional admiration shifting into something less defined, but equally powerful. Xavier breaks the connection first, checking his watch. It's late. The car can take you home. I'm not tired, she replies. Are you? A small smile, rare enough to be significant. No. Then let's finish this. They continue working, their dynamic fluid and efficient. Hours blur as they refine the proposal, anticipate objections, strengthen positions. When they finally pause, dawn breaks over Manhattan, painting the conference room in soft gold light. Kehlani stretches, muscles protesting the all-night session. I should change before the video conference with Singapore. Use my private bathroom, Xavier offers. There's a shower and spare clothes kept for situations like this. In his executive bathroom, sleek, minimalist, like everything in his world, Kehlani finds women's clothing in her size. Not just generic items, but pieces that match her professional style. The discovery reveals forethought, attention to detail, Xavier anticipating her needs before she expressed them. When she emerges, refreshed and changed, she finds Xavier on his office balcony, watching the city awaken. He's removed his jacket, rolled up his sleeves, small concessions to human comfort from a man who rarely displays weakness. "The clothes fit," he observes without turning. "They do." She joins him at the railing. "You planned ahead." "I plan for all contingencies." "Including me working through the night with you?" Now he looks at her, something unguarded in his expression, especially that. The admission, small yet significant, hangs between them. Neither speaks for a moment, the city sounds filling the silence. "Why did you really hire me?" Kelani asks suddenly. The truth this time. Xavier considers the question with characteristic thoroughness. "You showed remarkable composure in an impossible situation." "Being sold by my husband qualified as impossible, yes." "Not that." His gaze is direct. "The aftermath. Most people would have collapsed, returned home, started over elsewhere. You didn't." "I couldn't," she admits. "Pride, perhaps. Or stubbornness." "Strength," he corrects. "I recognized it because I've walked a similar path." The revelation, personal, unexpected, shifts the dynamic between them. Kelani studies him with new awareness. "Your background," she begins cautiously. "Foster care, you mentioned once." Xavier's posture stiffens slightly, automatic defense against personal inquiry. Then, surprisingly, he relaxes. "7 homes in 12 years, he states clinically. "After my parents died, the system took over. Some placements were adequate, others were educational in different ways." "Educational?" "I learned early that people are generally disappointing." His tone remains matter-of-fact. "Reliability is rare. Self-reliance is essential." "A lonely philosophy," Kelani observes. "An effective one." Xavier turns back to the view. "Stone Technologies was built on that foundation. And your personal life is precisely that. Personal." The barrier rises again, subtle but unmistakable. Kelani doesn't retreat. "Do you trust anyone, Xavier?" The use of his first name, rare in their professional relationship, catches his attention. Their eyes meet. "I trust you," he admits quietly, "more than is strategically advisable." The confession, delivered with characteristic precision, affects her more deeply than flowery declarations from Shelton ever did. Its honesty carries weight precisely because of its source. "My father warned me about Shelton," she reveals, "said he had shark eyes. They never truly smiled. Your father was perceptive." "He was." Kelani watches Xavier carefully. "What do you think he sees in you?" The question hangs between them, a vulnerability gambit that could strengthen their connection or sever it entirely. "Someone equally dangerous," Xavier answers honestly, "but for different reasons." Before Kelani can respond, his office phone rings, the Singapore team right on schedule. The moment breaks, professional reality reasserting itself. As they move inside to take the call, Kelani realizes something fundamental has shifted between them. Walls carefully constructed over years have developed their first significant cracks, allowing glimpses of the people behind the professional facades. The Singapore call proceeds perfectly, her strategy working exactly as planned. Throughout, she's aware of Xavier watching her with new appreciation, not just for her business acumen, but for something deeper, more personal. When the call ends successfully, he doesn't offer conventional congratulations. Instead, he says simply, "You see people clearly. It's your greatest strength." "Not everyone," she admits, thinking of Shelton. "We all have blind spots." His gaze holds hers. "The question is whether we learn from them." In this moment of perfect understanding, Xavier moves closer. Their professional boundaries, maintained for months through mutual restraint, suddenly seem arbitrary, insufficient. When he touches her face, the contact is tentative, unlike anything she would have expected from a man known for decisive action. She leans into his hand, permission granted without words. Their first kiss is careful, measured, two people accustomed to strategic consideration testing uncertain ground. The second is not. Walls built for protection crumble under the weight of long-denied connection. Past betrayals and hard-learned lessons temporarily forgotten as they discover each other with increasing urgency. Later, as morning light fills the office, professional composure restored, they stand at a crossroads, personal and professional boundaries irrevocably blurred. This complicates things, Kelani acknowledges. Most valuable things are complicated, Xavier responds. His hand finds hers, a simple connection that somehow means more than what came before. When Marissa arrives an hour later, she finds them reviewing the Singapore contracts with professional focus, the only evidence of change being an almost imperceptible shift in their dynamic, a new ease in their interactions. The fortress walls haven't fallen completely. Both still guard themselves from past wounds, but the first bridge has been built between them, creating possibility where only professional respect existed before. Chapter 10. Justice moves, Stone Technologies, Xavier's office. Morning light streams through floor-to-ceiling windows as Kelani reviews quarterly reports with practiced efficiency. 3 months have passed since their relationship evolved beyond professional boundaries, a transition handled with characteristic discretion by both. Xavier enters, immediately commanding the space as only he can. The board approved your promotion. Chief Strategic Officer becomes official next week. That's excellent news, she responds, professional even in private. His subtle smile, visible only to someone who knows him intimately, conveys more than words. They've maintained perfect separation between personal and professional realms, their relationship as carefully structured as their business strategies. The press release goes out tomorrow, he continues. First female C-suite executive at Stone Technologies. The media will want interviews. I'll be prepared. Kelani makes notes on her tablet. The timing works well with the Singapore merger announcement. Their conversation is interrupted by Xavier's assistant. Detective Morris is here to see Ms. Yara. He says it's important. Morris enters, his rumpled appearance contrasting sharply with the sleek executive suite. He nods to Xavier, but addresses Kelani directly. We've got him, he states without preamble. Malcolm has been extradited. He's in custody at Metropolitan Detention Center. The news, anticipated yet still jolting, leaves Kelani momentarily speechless. Xavier moves closer, not touching her, but offering proximity as support. When? She finally asks. Late last night. Morris produces a folder. He's facing multiple charges: fraud, identity theft, crossing state lines to commit crimes. But we need your testimony to make the strongest case. Kelani accepts the folder with steady hands. Of course, there's more. Morris hesitates. We found evidence of 6 other marriages before yours. Same pattern: courtship, marriage, theft, disappearance. 6? The number somehow makes it worse, not just a personal betrayal, but a practiced methodology. All similar profiles, Morris continues. Educated women, professional positions, some family wealth, but primarily self-made. You were the latest in a pattern. Xavier's voice cuts through the conversation. But the last... Something in his tone, cold certainty, causes Morris to look at him sharply. We handle justice through legal channels, Mr. Stone. Of course. Xavier's expression reveals nothing. That's why Ms. Yara will cooperate fully. After Morris leaves, Kelani stands at the window processing the information. Xavier gives her space, understanding her need to absorb this development privately. I want to see him, she says finally. Xavier studies her carefully. Why? Closure. She turns to face him. I need to see him as he truly is, not as I believed him to be. I'll arrange it, Xavier promises. Metropolitan Detention Center, visiting area. Kalani sits straight-backed on an uncomfortable plastic chair, Xavier beside her. Despite her insistence, she could handle this alone. You don't have to be here, she says quietly. I know. His response is simple but resolute. Prison doors clang open. Shelton Malcolm enters, shackled and prison uniformed, his confident charm diminished but not extinguished. He freezes momentarily upon seeing Kehlani, then smiles as if they're meeting at a cocktail party. My beautiful wife, he greets her, ignoring Xavier completely. I've missed you. Ex-wife, Kehlani corrects calmly. The divorce was finalized 14 months ago. Shelton shrugs, sits across from them. A technicality. We were good together, weren't we? Before circumstances intervened. Circumstances, Xavier interjects, voice dangerously quiet. Is that what you call selling your wife to cover gambling debts? Now Shelton acknowledges Xavier, something calculating in his expression. Stone. I should have known you'd swoop in. Was she worth the $760,000? She wasn't purchased, Xavier states coldly. Unlike you, I recognize human value beyond transaction. Shelton turns back to Kehlani, leaning forward conspiratorially. Has he told you about his background? The foster care system produces fascinating pathologies, trust issues, control compulsions. I'm not here to discuss Xavier, Kehlani interrupts. I'm here to see you clearly, perhaps for the first time. And what do you see, my love? A fraud, she answers simply. A man who constructs elaborate facades because there's nothing authentic beneath them. Shelton's charm slips, revealing something harder. You knew exactly who I was. You saw what you wanted to see. Perhaps, she acknowledges, but that self-deception lasted months. Yours is lifelong. Anger flashes across Shelton's features. You think you've upgraded? Stone collects people like trophies. I might have taken your money, but he'll take your identity. Kehlani rises, unmoved by his attempt to create division. Goodbye, Shelton. I won't be visiting again. As they turn to leave, Shelton calls after them. You're wearing his watch now, Kehlani. Just another possession with a different owner. Outside the prison, Kehlani exhales deeply, releasing tension she didn't realize she was carrying. Xavier studies her with concern. Are you all right? Yes, she answers, surprised by the truth in it. He seems smaller than I remembered. Predators often do when caged. Xavier leads her toward the waiting car. Was it worth it? Seeing him. It was. Kehlani slides into the car beside him. The man I married never existed. That's harder to accept than being betrayed by someone real. Xavier's hand finds hers, a rare public display. His crimes extended beyond you. The evidence Morris gathered will ensure he serves significant time. Stone Technologies, Legal Department. Caroline Weber presents options for Kehlani's testimony against Shelton. You can appear in person or provide video deposition, she explains. Given your position with the company, we recommend minimizing public association with the case. I want to testify in person, Kehlani decides. Not just for myself, but for the other women. Xavier, listening from the doorway, nods approvingly. I'll arrange security and media management. Caroline hesitates. There's something else. Malcolm's defense team is trying to introduce your relationship with Mr. Stone as evidence of conspiracy. What conspiracy? Kehlani asks, incredulous. They're suggesting Mr. Stone orchestrated Malcolm's downfall to acquire you. Caroline's discomfort is evident. It's absurd, but it could create negative publicity. Xavier dismisses this concern with a sharp gesture. Let them try. The timeline and evidence are clear. Alone in Xavier's office later, Kelani confronts the implication directly. "Did you track Shelton before that night at the plaza?" Xavier considers her question with characteristic thoroughness. "I had him investigated after the poker game, yes. Because of what he offered. Because any man who would sell his wife is capable of worse crimes." Xavier's directness, always his most authentic quality, reassures her. "I didn't orchestrate his downfall, Kelani. He managed that himself. But you were willing to let me believe you were honoring his arrangement when you first came to the hotel. A tactical decision," he admits. "I needed to assess your involvement. Some wives participate in their husbands' schemes." The revelation that he initially suspected her complicity should offend her. Instead, she appreciates his honesty. "And now," she challenges, "am I another acquisition in the Stone Empire?" Xavier's expression softens fractionally, a vulnerability he shows only to her. "You're the only person who sees me clearly. That makes you irreplaceable, not acquirable." The courthouse, weeks later. Kelani testifies with composed dignity, recounting Shelton's manipulation without emotion-clouding facts. In the gallery, Xavier watches, his presence supportive without being possessive. 3 other women also testify, each sharing similar stories of calculated deception. Their collective testimony paints a devastating portrait of systematic predation. During cross-examination, Shelton's defense attorney attempts to undermine Kelani's credibility. "Isn't it true you began working for Xavier Stone immediately after your separation from Mr. Malcolm?" "Yes," Kelani answers calmly. "And your relationship with Mr. Stone has since become romantic." "Objection," the prosecutor intervenes. "Relevance goes to witness motivation and potential conspiracy," the defense claims. "I'll allow it," the judge decides. "The witness will answer." Kelani meets the question directly. "My professional relationship with Mr. Stone began after my husband abandoned me. Our personal relationship developed much later, after my divorce was finalized." "Convenient timing," the defense attorney suggests. "There was nothing convenient about discovering my husband had sold me to cover gambling debts," Kelani responds, her composure powerful in its restraint. "What's relevant is that Mr. Malcolm systematically targeted women, manipulated them into marriage, then stole their assets." Her testimony concludes to murmurs of approval from the gallery. As she exits the witness stand, she passes Shelton, seeing clearly the empty charm that once captivated her. Outside the courthouse, reporters gather. Xavier's security team creates a path through the crowd. As cameras flash, he takes her hand, publicly acknowledging their relationship for the first time. "You didn't have to do that," she notes as they enter the car. "I did," he counters. "I'm not hiding what matters." Later that evening, Xavier's penthouse. They review media coverage of the trial, most outlets focusing on Shelton's pattern of fraud rather than Kelani's current relationship. "The jury will convict," Xavier predicts, closing his laptop. His pattern is too established to ignore. "It's not about the conviction anymore," Kelani realizes. "It's about recognition, acknowledging what happened to prevent it recurring." Xavier studies her with appreciation. "You've transformed personal betrayal into public service. Not many could. Survival sometimes requires reinvention." Her hand finds his. "You taught me that." As night falls over Manhattan, they stand together at the window. 2 people who found unexpected connection. Through adversity, building something neither believed possible before. Trust beyond transaction, value beyond utility, strength through shared vulnerability rather than isolated fortification. Chapter 11, Courtroom Revelations, Federal Courthouse. The air in the courtroom feels heavy, laden with anticipation. Kelani sits in the gallery, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Xavier beside her, his presence solid and reassuring without a single word exchanged. The prosecutor, a woman with tired eyes but unwavering focus, addresses the jury. The evidence is irrefutable. 7 women, 7 marriages, 7 thefts. This wasn't a man who fell into financial trouble. This was calculated, premeditated fraud. Across the courtroom, Shelton sits beside his defense attorney, his once magnetic charm dulled by months in detention. Still, he plays his role, shoulders slightly slumped, expression appropriately regretful. Kehlani recognizes the performance now, sees the hollowness behind it. The defense makes their final plea. My client made poor decisions, yes, but the prosecution has painted Mr. Malcolm as a mastermind when he's merely a man who found himself overwhelmed by financial pressure. As the jury files out to deliberate, Kehlani releases a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Xavier's hand finds hers briefly. "You've done everything you could," he says quietly. In the corridor outside, Kehlani notices a group of women huddled together. She recognizes them from earlier testimony, Shelton's previous wives. Victoria, elegant in a simple grey suit, notices her and approaches. "Your testimony was—" Victoria searches for the right word. "Raw. Thank you for that." "I was terrified," Kehlani admits. "We all were." Victoria gestures to the other women. "But you had the words we couldn't find." Diane, arms crossed tightly across her chest, joins them. Her gaze flickers to Xavier, who maintains a respectful distance. "So you're with him now?" Diane asks, nodding toward Xavier. No judgment in her voice, just curiosity tinged with something like envy. "Yes," Kehlani answers simply. "You deserve happiness," Victoria interjects. "We all do." The bailiff appears, announcing the jury's return, far sooner than anyone expected. As they file back into the courtroom, Kehlani feels a knot form in her stomach. The jury foreperson stands, paper trembling slightly in her hand. On the first count of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Each subsequent count brings the same verdict: guilty, guilty, guilty. Relief washes over Kehlani in waves. Beside her, Xavier remains outwardly composed, but she feels the tension leave his body. As officers move to take Shelton away, he turns, eyes finding Kehlani's. Gone is the performance, the charm, the calculated appeal. What remains is something cold, something true. The man beneath the mask finally revealed. "You were nothing before me," he says, voice low but carrying in the suddenly quiet courtroom. "Just a salesgirl. Remember that." Instead of shrinking away, Kehlani rises, approaching the barrier. "I know exactly who I am," she replies, voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I always did. That's what you never understood." Outside the courthouse, reporters call questions. Xavier guides her through the crowd with a protective hand at the small of her back. "Ms. Yara, how does it feel knowing he'll be sentenced next month? Do you have any comments about the verdict?" Xavier begins to deflect the questions, but Kehlani touches his arm gently, stopping him. She faces the reporters directly. "Justice matters," she says simply. "Not just for me, but for every person who's been betrayed by someone they trusted. The verdict today isn't about vengeance. It's about truth." That evening, in Xavier's penthouse, they watch the news coverage in silence. Kehlani's statement has become the headline. "You were remarkable today," Xavier says, handing her a glass of wine. "I didn't feel remarkable. I felt—" She searches for the right word. "Liberated. Like I could finally put down something heavy I've been carrying." Xavier watches her with an intensity that once unnerved her, but now feels like coming home. "What will you do now?" "Move forward," she answers without hesitation. "The other women are creating a support network for victims of romance scams. I want to help. Using pain as purpose," Xavier observes, "turning weakness into strength." "Not weakness," Kehlani corrects him gently. "Vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage." Xavier considers this, then nods slowly. A man still learning emotional truths his business acumen never taught him. "You've changed me," he admits quietly. "We've changed each other." He rises, retrieving something from his desk drawer. A small box, which he places in her hands without ceremony. Inside lies a watch, not ostentatious like the timepieces she once sold, but elegant in its simplicity. The face contains a pattern she recognizes immediately, the constellations visible from Jamaica on the night of her birth. "How did you know?" she asks, deeply moved by the personal nature of the gift. "I asked your father," Xavier admits. "We've been corresponding." This revelation, that the two most important men in her life have connected without her knowledge, brings unexpected tears to her eyes. "He said you always looked to the stars when you needed direction," Xavier continues, taking the watch and fastening it around her wrist. "I thought you might want them with you always." As night falls over Manhattan, they stand together at the window. Two people who found unexpected connection through adversity, who recognized in each other something worth fighting for, worth building upon. "What happens now?" she asks, leaning into his embrace. Xavier's answer is characteristically direct, yet filled with promise. "Whatever we choose." Together. Chapter 12. Eternal Flame. Maldives private villa at sunset. Waves crash against pristine shores as Kehlani stands on the balcony, the ocean breeze caressing her skin. The past 2 years have transformed her from betrayed bride to Chief Strategic Officer of Stone Technologies, from victim to architect of her own destiny. Xavier approaches from behind, arms encircling her waist. Despite his continued public reputation for cold efficiency, with her he allows vulnerability few others would recognize. "What are you thinking about?" he asks, lips brushing her neck. "How quickly life changes," she answers, turning to face him. 2 years ago, I thought my world had ended. The news of Shelton's sentencing, 10 years without parole, reached them this morning. Justice served at last, a chapter truly closed. "Do you regret any of it?" Xavier asks, rare uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Kehlani traces his jawline with gentle fingers. "The pain led me to you. How could I regret that?" Their bodies press together as he lifts her effortlessly onto the balcony railing, strong hands ensuring her safety. The setting sun silhouettes them against the crimson sky, casting golden light across their features. "I spent my life calculating risks, avoiding vulnerability," Xavier confesses, his voice rough with emotion. "Then you happened to me. We happened to each other," she corrects, understanding him as no one else can. Two people who stopped letting past betrayals define their futures. In their bedroom, candles flicker as his hands explore her body with reverent hunger. Their lovemaking transcends physical connection, each touch an unspoken promise, each kiss a sealed vow. "You weren't a wager," he breathes against her skin. "You were my redemption." Afterward, as they lie tangled in silk sheets, Xavier reaches for a small box beside the bed. Inside rests a ring, an emerald unlike the one Shelton gave her, this one personally selected and set in a design Xavier created himself. "I've never believed in fate," he tells her, "until I found you in the aftermath of betrayal. We were forged in fire, tested by circumstance, and emerged stronger together than we ever could have been apart." Tears shimmer in Kehlani's eyes as she accepts the ring. "From transaction to transformation," she whispers, understanding their unique journey. As she straddles him, moonlight streaming through open windows illuminates her body. "Let's not waste a single moment," she murmurs against his lips. Their connection transcends the ugly bet that initially brought them together, transforming into something sacred and enduring. Two souls who found each other against impossible odds, now burning with a flame that will never die. In the final moment, As passion crests like waves breaking on the shore below their villa, Kelani realizes the profound truth of their journey. She was never truly wagered away. She was always destined to find her way exactly where she belongs, in the arms of a man who sees her value beyond measure, who challenges her strength even as he cherishes her vulnerability. "I love you," Xavier whispers, words that once seemed impossible from a man who built empires on strategic calculation rather than emotion. "I love you too," she answers, certain of this truth above all others. As dawn breaks over the horizon, they stand together on the balcony, watching the beginning of a new day. The watch Xavier designed for her marks the time, not in hours and minutes, but in heartbeats shared between two people who discovered that true connection isn't found in grand romantic gestures or perfect circumstances, but in the courage to remain open after devastation, to trust after betrayal, to love after loss. Together they face the rising sun, not as CEO and executive, not as rescuer and rescued, but as equals who chose each other deliberately, who built something beautiful from the ashes of deception, who transformed a wager of convenience into a covenant of choice. "What happens now?" Kelani asks, leaning into his embrace. Xavier's answer is simple yet profound. "Everything we choose, together."